The time is now, the future's in your eyes, moving faster than the speed of light.
Carnegie Hall, please.
Hi, I'm Kurt, and I'm sitting in the control room here of House of Vibes recording studio in Highland Park, New Jersey. And the question has come up before. A lot of people don't know how music is made. What does it mean to record? So this segment of Studio Vibes, we're going to focus on kind of an overview of the recording process and just sort of take you through it. Okay? Okay, historically, back in the early days of recording, that we're talking the early in the 20th century, recording pretty much was basically the capturing of a performance. You'd get a band or an artist with a band, and you'd put them in a room and mic them up and capture their performance live. And that's pretty much how it was done, and that was pretty much the process throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s, into the 60s. Things evolved and the equipment evolved, and eventually you got to this machine on the left, which is a 24-track, 2-inch tape machine. There's a tape here, it's 2 inches thick, 24 tracks, meaning you have individual slices of sound right next to each other on that tape, traveling together. And if you could record the entire band and have it on separate tracks and have a little bit more control and more ability to change things or add things if you wanted to at a later date or even at that time. And then what happened with bands like the Beatles in the 60s, once they got a hold of a machine that had a lot of tracks, they would be able to record different things at different times. For instance, you'd record your what we'd call a basic track, drums, bass, guitar. Then the singer would add a vocal. Then a guitar player would say, I want to do a guitar solo. And you could do that on the separate tracks here. And it gives you a whole lot more opportunity to be creative. And all of a sudden, it's not just a performance, it becomes a collection of performances that you're capturing. And so that changed the whole way recordings were made at that point. And this was in the 60s. The Beatles really were at the forefront of that, and they started that sort of technique of recording with only 4 tracks. Then you got 8, then you got 24. And then basically these two machines are analog tape machines. And that was the way things were done all the way through the 80s into the 90s. And then digital recording came into vogue. It was invented. I brought you pretty much from the beginnings of recording in the early 20th century up until somewhere in the 90s. And in the 90s, that was pretty much the advent of digital recording. You had computers coming in and various forms of recording to a digital software was being used. And eventually it sort of wound up on a hard disk, a computer hard disk, and you use a digital audio workstation software to record your performance. And you have basically an interface which is taking the sound and converting it into a digital format so that it can be stored on a computer. And so right here is an example of a digital audio workstation. This one's Digital Performer. There's a lot of different ones. There's Pro Tools is kind of the one that's famous, but here we're using Digital Performer. And it works very similarly to the way analog works, except you have a lot more capability to edit and change things that you don't quite have with analog recording. This is something I'm going to go into more in a future segment, but I wanted to mention it for now because it's pretty much the accepted current way to record or state-of-the-art way to record. Even though a lot of people still use analog, and we do here, we love the old technologies here. This is an overview, and I hope you appreciate it. And, we'll see you next time.